This is CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean Tabor. This episode we have a special guest, Charles Lamanna. Charles is General Manager of Application Platform at Microsoft, and Charles is going to fill us in on all the exciting stuff coming with the spring release, specifically around the Common Data Service. This episode is brought to you by Ingenious. Ingenious Connector Enterprise integrates your telephone system into Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM for increased phone agent productivity. Features like screen pop, click to dial, and call logging enable efficient customer service and a comprehensive view of caller interactions. We thank Ingenious for sponsoring CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Welcome to a special episode of CRM Audio. Well, joining us today is Charles Lamanna, and Charles Lamanna is the General Manager of Application and Platform at Microsoft. Welcome, Charles.
Thanks, Joel. It's great to be here today.
Can you tell us a little more, what does General Manager Application Platform mean?
So at Microsoft here, we view the application platform as kind of what's underneath Dynamics 365, as well as what's underneath the customization of Office 365, as well as ISVs and third parties. And for people that have been around CRM for a while, you will recognize with the CDS 2.0 launch, we actually brought in the XRM functionality to be part of the application platform, part of PowerApps, as well as brought in Microsoft Flow and this existing common data service and common data model concepts. And all of that is in my engineering organization.
Great. So a lot of the stuff that's in the new release notes that came out last week applies directly to you with the marriage of CDS and XRM and PowerApps and all that coming together.
Yep, that's right.
And so I guess the first question I had, and I posted that on LinkedIn and on our blog, we do CRM Tip of the Day and CRM Audio, we had some things to refer to it. I got some comments of people who are maybe old-time CRM users that were a little bit confused with what does this really mean with CDS and XRM becoming the same thing. Could you do your best job of kind of explaining to somebody who's a long-time CRM user, what does that really mean?
Yep. So I think I'll do that through, a few different segments that I help kind of create clarity around it. The first is if you're a Dynamics CRM 9.0 or later user, you are technically now a PowerApps and CDS user. And that's because the same platform that powers Dynamics 9.0 and later is the same platform that's being brought forward for the Common Data Service and as the underpinnings of PowerApps. So what that means is kind of any customizations that you have for a CRM installation or kind of any apps that you've built, those are all technically using the Common Data Service and using PowerApps. And the reason that's possible is I'd say for two reasons. The first is we are taking literally the same technology, the same code base that exists from XRM today that powers CRM, and we're using that going forward. And the second is it's an explicit goal of the team that we maintain full backwards compatibility with XRM for the new standalone application platform offering through PowerApps and the Common Data Service. So what I like to say is when people ask me, what does it mean to me if you're a Dynamics CRM customer, all these changes we announce? If you don't want it to mean anything, it doesn't have to. Nothing changes for CRM customers today. Nothing at all. All it means is we're expanding the community beyond CRM. So for people from Office, for people who want a standalone application platform, for other parts of Dynamics 365, they all now use the same platform that was powering CRM.
So what I think confused some people, and I got to admit myself early on, is I thought, okay, they're building CDS on the XRM platform, and before with 1.0 of CDS, it was a separate thing. So I thought, okay, it's going to be XRM, but it's still a separate thing. But no, it's the same platform, same database that you have in XRM will be your Common Data Service database, right?
Yep, that's exactly. Yeah, I think the question I get is, hey, does this mean I have to do data movement or data integration between CRM and CDS? And the answer is literally no, because it literally is the same SQL database in our backend.
So if you tried
infrastructure.
So if you tried in CDS 1.0 to do an integration between operations and customer engagement, it was possible, but it was 2 hops to get there. It was data coming into the CDS from one system and coming out. This removes one of those hops.
Yep. Yeah, and I'd say that kind of, I think I'd say that was one of the big I don't want to say mistakes, but one of the big learnings we had from CDS1 is that where your data is and how you secure that data and all the policies and rules you have around that data is really the crown jewel of any business application deployment for one of our customers. And the best way to kind of go get critical mass and provide a lot of value around that data is to just use the data in place. Because for customers who try to bring customer engagement and finance and operations together in CDS 1.0, there was all kinds of security problems, synchronization problems, dirty read problems, things like that. That all goes away if it's the same database.
So what were some of the areas that, besides that being a separate database, what were some of the other areas where you feel that CDS 1.0 maybe missed the mark?
Another big one I'd say is just not a lot of great applications built on top of it natively. And the way we look at it for a lot of our customers is you generally are going to start your journey to kind of digitally transform how you operate your business by going and buying an application off the shelf. And after that is when you start to really look at, hey, how do I customize that application? How do I tweak it? Or how do I go build standalone applications that are different but use the same data or are used by the same end users? And what that would mean is for CDS 1.0, for a lot of our customers, they didn't want to have that conversation about adopting a completely bare platform without any apps on it. Now with the CDS 2 launch, we basically we have the CRM app on top of that platform. And we have the new talent app that's also covered in the spring release notes, also built on top of that same platform. So the benefit is we have all of these apps, and for our customers, they can start from CRM or start from talent or start from marketing or whatever it is, and then they can kind of drift over to the platform in a way that makes a lot of sense for them without starting from a kind of completely empty platform first.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit more about the integration specifics, because in CDS 1.0, the integration was driven by templates between, for example, you had a customer master move from AX to CRM, or you have orders or products or things like that. How does that change in CDS 2.0?
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects to it. One is what we have today, and kind of one is where we're going to be later this calendar year. The first one is where we are today. We still have those same integration templates. There's one less hop now to go from customer engagement to F&O and back and forth. And CDS is obviously the same thing as customer engagements database. So those templates still exist and still make it easy to, at a regular interval, move and transform data between the two systems. But as we go look towards later this year and work that the team is actually developing as we speak, we're going to make it have native data integration between F&O and CDS and CE, because we're going to have quasi dual write capability. So basically, you'll be able to update and manage accounts in F&O, and those same accounts will automatically and completely managed by Microsoft without any integration templates will appear inside of CE. And kind of that back and forth, first starting with a lot of the common spine data like accounts, customers, contacts, products, things like that will go back and forth. And then in the fullness of time, things like order lines and sales orders and whatnot will go back and forth as well. And the idea there is we want to make it be truly transparent and truly feel like a common data service with no integration, no data movement or anything like that between F&O and CRM. And CDS, of course. So
it sounds like initially, that seamless integration is not available. So would you see initially people are going to be doing what they traditionally have and supplementing the templates with, some Scribe or SSIS or other third-party integration tools?
Yep, absolutely. So I think if we like Scribe, Informatica, SSIS, Azure Logic Apps, all those tools for data integration are still absolutely key to the ecosystem, because the reality is it's rarely, like as you go to mid-market or larger, it's rarely even just F&O and CRM you want to bring together, or ERP and CRM you want to bring together. You want to actually pull in dozens or hundreds of other systems in your enterprise, and for those, like MDM or data integration tool is a great fit to actually make sure that you can have that consistent view of that key business data inside of CDS. So I'd say yes, they definitely still have a role, and in the interim between specifically F&O and customer engagement, or with CDS, data integration templates will be a good fit, but there are many scenarios where you want to go beyond that, and those data integration solutions make it.
And Charles, with the templates, do you see a future where we're creating more templates to make that integration easier in terms of non-Microsoft sources of data?
Absolutely. So I say our first wave we're doing for those templates is we're going to go after all the major business app offerings out there. So and make it very easy to bring that data into CDS. And by bringing it into CDS, it then works in CRM and later this year in F&O. And we're going to go that's like Salesforce, SAP, Workday, kind of those types of companies to go bring that information into CDS in a first-class way managed by Microsoft with data integration templates.
Where does PowerQuery fit in all that? Because the release notes mention PowerQuery in the integration category. How does PowerQuery supplement that?
Yeah, so PowerQuery is kind of our technology for shaping data, and it uses like the M language underneath the hood, and it has some incredibly powerful capabilities in terms of generating query filters for different data sources, plus doing like folding and joins and things like that in a very intelligent way at scale. And we're going to use PowerQuery kind of as a technology for defining the transformations that you want to run as part of loading into CDS. So the integration templates will have a PowerQuery experience where you can actually shape the data as it ends up inside of CDS. And what's great is we know this technology, it's known by millions of people from Power BI and Excel. So very proven piece of technology with people who are real experts on it and be able to go use those same skills to actually shape data as they get pushed and pulled into the common data service.
And with ISVs, right, we touched on this a minute ago, but do you see a space where those templates, those data integration templates, would be part and parcel like on AppSource, where ISVs could actually create their own and publish them as something that they can offer to customers, whether they're their own customers or not, like any other app?
Absolutely. So I'd say here I'm looking a little bit to the future. So don't hang me on this. We're not going to have this in April, but the idea is we want to make data integration templates and those artifacts be part of the solutioning infrastructure that we already know and love from XRM. Just like we're going to do the same thing for PowerApps and Flow. So I'd say the biggest thing would be to really view it as an opportunity, and I'd say that because we don't have kind of a first-class data integration tool. I mean, we have the integration templates, but that's really around data movement, and I wouldn't call it an MDM solution. And with CDS now being the platform that Microsoft is betting on across all of Dynamics 365, as well as a platform it's betting on for customization and standalone app creation for all of Office 365, there's just the addressable market as a partner to CDS or to Dynamics is substantially larger. And I say really kind of going and understanding what that different landscape looks like can bring a lot of different opportunities, and things that may not have historically been a Dynamics integration project could very much become a CDS integration project. And we already see that on the Microsoft side based on the usage that we have today from standalone platform. If you look at from like a monthly active user perspective, about half is a classical Dynamics type workload, whereas the other half is, I'd say, a classic non-Dynamics workload. These are productivity app customizations or departmental applications. And that half, which is not Dynamics type workload, that is actually growing faster from an overall usage perspective. And that's completely new to the platform, like new to XRM integrators. So I think really understanding that different perspective for CDS is a really big opportunity, and also will kind of change what the integrations will look like themselves.
We've been asking as CRM developers, or now Dynamics 365 developers, we've been asking for XRM SKU for years. We said, look, we really want something that just allows to talk to the database and nothing else. We don't want any fluff surrounding it. But we don't want any user interface. We don't want nothing of that kind. Is CDS 2.0 actually the answer to those prayers, I should say?
Yes, I'd say they've been answered, and that is with the CDS2, which, by the way, the marketing team here at Microsoft is going to kill me for using that word, but with CDS2, you can go get a platform-only SKU without having to acquire the customer engagement license. And you can use that SKU and just have API-only access using just the SDK, and, for example, doing it from mobile apps that you write with Xamarin or just natively for device, or by building your own web apps or web services and things like that. So that's entirely possible now, and that's the PowerApps SKU. So if you go to PowerApps.com, SKUs that are available there, those are platform-only level SKUs, and they support just developer-only clients without having to use any of the clients provided by the platform themselves.
I mean, to me, it's great, and it does work well. It does fit well with the Canvas apps because there is no UI. How does it work with the model-driven apps?
In terms of like, how do you actually leverage the functionality, like the UI?
Yeah, like what do I get? Model-driven apps, to me, they were well, initially, first look is that's the good old Dynamics 365 customer engagement. That's what you get with model-driven apps. But I'm having difficulties picturing Dynamics 365 without any UI. So when I start building model-driven app, like what does it give me? Like what is my UI? It's like blank, absolutely blank piece of paper. And
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you start building UI, there's two ways to do it. There's the Canvas app style, which is kind of, I'd say, what PowerApps was a few months ago, where you start from basically something that looks like a PowerPoint deck, and you can basically sketch out your screens and then bind those screens to data. That's kind of the Canvas apps direction. The model-driven apps direction, that really is just the existing Dynamics customer engagement UI framework, which means like forms, business process flows, app modules, things like that, that actually enable you to go build data or build UI based on the data layout and data schema.
Okay, so kind of nice and easy way. With the built-in Canvas apps, the biggest fear of them all for developers is the repeat of what I would call Microsoft success story, when there was this great tool thrown around and said, hey, look, you don't need to be a developer to do stuff, right? And then we ended up for years mopping up and fixing up incoherent database schemas, half-baked applications created by those non-developers. Now, from your point of view, what can we do to stop this from happening? I know we want to empower, citizen developer or developer citizen, however we call them, but at the same time, we want data model to get the data model right. We want to get, usability correct. How can we approach that to avoid repeat of this Microsoft success story?
Yeah, that's a great question I get all the time from customers when I talk to them about the platform. I say there are two things I want to say. The first is things are different now because since the actual database and apps and things like that are running in the cloud, it's much more tenable for admins or IT to come in and actually see what are all the databases that are in my organization, what are all the apps within my organization, and as a result start doing things like consolidation of databases or enforcing best practices around UI creation and things like that. And the second thing is, a lot of the people who are working on Power Apps and kind of doing this mission are the same people who actually worked on Access before, and they've definitely learned that lesson because that's like the people want to like bar the door sometimes when you come talk to them about how easy it is to build apps with Power Apps, because they just have nightmares imagining 1,000 mission critical apps that were built by people with not technical know-how and have no intention to service it or support it long term. And through the combination of the fact that everything's in the cloud and these new admin capabilities that we already have available, it's much more approachable and manageable from a central perspective to go track what's being built and to enforce best practices of how it's being built and to go take control and take ownership of things as they're being built within the organization. And I think this admin set of functionality is a huge area of investment for us because we do recognize this as a major blocker because we want companies and customers to come in and view it as a strategic decision to go use a high productivity, low code application development environment like PowerApps, and we know it's a prerequisite that you actually can do that in a manageable way.
Oh, that's great that you guys recognize that it is something that nightmares for sysadmins are made of. The applications created by citizen developers that it's impossible to scale or manage or maintain. On that one. On the repeat of the history, so to speak, when we install SQL Server, even now we get some leftovers of SQL synchronization framework, which went very quickly to 2.3, I think was the last version, then a beta of version 4, and then it just died. So the synchronization story behind CDS, is it from ground up? Is it based on any parts of SQL framework, or you just picked up the lessons learned and moved on? What's the story underlying, and how I, as a developer, can tap in and extend synchronization?
Yeah, I think so. I'd say a general lesson we try to follow is, wherever we can within Microsoft, let's use technology or services that already is battle tested. And I think there's a lot of great examples of that. So like with kind of Dynamics 365 customer engagement version 9.0, it's completely hosted in Azure. So we extensively use SQL Azure on our backend. And as a side effect, we get a lot of great extension points there to go enable some synchronization on our side in the back end, without kind of invisible to customers, but to say improve performance or improve backup capabilities or restore capabilities. From a data integration perspective and synchronization that way, we are using PowerQuery and we are using the same engine that's inside of Excel as well as Power BI. So we are, again, using something battle tested and tried and true. And for other things like data synchronization into Azure, we're using things like Service Bus, an Event Hub, and things like that to actually drive eventing, so that if you're using any of the Azure services like Logic Apps or Data Factory, you're actually able to, again, easily move and route that data to the right location where it makes sense. So I think we are using a bunch of different pieces of technology generally that already exist in some form. And we do that because not only does it give us a very tried and true piece of technology, but it also gives kind of knowledge out there in the market. There are a lot of people who know how to use PowerQuery and use the M language, and a lot of people who know about Azure Data Factory and Azure Logic Apps and Service Bus and Event Hub, things like that. Instead of having to go educate and teach you yet another tool to do those things, we're just really leaning on the idea that people can take things off the shelf that they already use when they work with Microsoft. Yeah,
that's great. So a question, if you could talk a little bit about security. So since my CRM or Dynamics 365 customer engagement and CDS and PowerApps are all the same platform now, how is security handled? Specifically, Dynamics has very granular security. You look at field security, business units, etc., where CDS users don't necessarily have the exact same security role structure. So how is that going to work if I have a field, like a secured field in Dynamics 365, like social security number, that I don't want to necessarily make available through CDS or PowerApps? What does that look like?
So I'd say one thing is CDS is just the same platform as Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, which includes the security. So from a data security perspective, everything you could do before with XRM or D365 customer engagement, you can do with CDS now, based on this most recent release, which means highly granular access control, very specific and tailored roles. All of that is possible. Whereas CDS 1 didn't have any of those capabilities. But with the CDS 2 release, we actually have all those capabilities brought forward. There is a limitation I do want to call out, which is Canvas apps don't have as much awareness about these special fields. And what that means is you may like see metadata, for example, in your app as you're building it, but that metadata may describe a field that you actually won't be able to see based on security, and you may be able to bind it to a field and things like that. However, you will never be able to see the data because the data is secured at the CDS layer. So there may be some UI weirdness with Canvas apps, and we're going to go address those over the next 3 to 6 months. But the data is always secure. The data always matches the security policy and has the same richness as CE today.
And when you're talking about Canvas apps versus model-driven apps, and you have a business scenario, how would you advise users, customers, administrators when they have a business challenge and say, is this model-driven or is this Canvas? How do we know the difference?
Yep. And I think the way that we think about it internally is for a Canvas app, you should go that route if you're kind of UI first. It's super important to have a specific user experience and a specific flow for your end users beyond, say, the data that maybe backs it. Then Canvas apps are a great choice because you have that complete control of XY coordinates, exact layout, all those different things without having to write any code. But then if you go the Canvas app route, you do take on the burden of actually binding that pixel perfect UI to your data. On the flip side, if having a very specific experience is not that important, and it's much more important to say collect the right data with the right fields and enforce the right business processes and support an evolution of your data model, then model-driven apps are an excellent choice. They won't be as pixel perfect and as tailored because they're declaratively based, but they will naturally reflect changes you make to your schema and your relationships and models and things like that right inside the user experience. And kind of that's the split we go from, hey, when you want to go build your app, do you want to start from data and go up, or do you want to start from UI and go down? And based on your answer to that, which should be informed by the business requirements for an implementation, will inform whether or not you go Canvas apps or model-driven apps.
But at some point, this comes together, right? Because if you do the Canvas app, the Pixel Perfect app, that's creating a data model underneath the covers, and you could have a model-driven app that incorporates database objects from that Canvas app, right?
Absolutely. So, like, we look at it as today they're a little bit siloed, and that's like legacy reasons, but we do want to bring them much closer together. Like, as an example, if I'm on a form in a model-driven app, why can't I replace part of the form with a Canvas-based app? On the opposite direction, if I'm inside a Canvas-based app, why can't I just make a screen be my form, which is a model-driven concept? And the answer is, the only reason is just we haven't built it yet, but that's 100% on our roadmap as we go forward for this new combined platform, is to go make that be possible.
I think I just heard you say that Canvas apps are going to replace dialogues and CRMs.
I'm not going to go that far. At least I'm not going to let you record me going that far. No,
but that would be awesome.
Yes, indeed.
But does that mean that again, long-awaited custom control framework for Dynamics that again it hasn't even been in preview, but it's been shown around lots of times, so for us to make sense out of it, and we do have controls that deliver it. Does it mean that you'll be extending this framework or redoing or redesigning this framework to incorporate controls and basically Canvas-driven apps and bring them as first-class citizens into the forms, Dynamics forms, and into into model-driven apps?
Yes, that's the plan. And I'd say, kind of give you guys a little sneak peek of where we're going in the future, is we want to make it so that the custom control framework, which is for pro devs, when you write a control for that, it will work in both Canvas apps as well as model-driven apps. That's the first piece. And the second piece is you'll be able to drop on Canvas apps inside a form or model-driven app just as if it were a control, or at least like a region type thing. Both of those are in the roadmap and not that far away for us to go enable. And we view those as really important because the reality is, hey, maybe 85% of your app, you don't care about the pixel perfectness. You don't care about the data model, but for 15% you do. In that case, it's much easier to be a model-driven app with some Canvas app capabilities embedded instead of having to make an either-or choice. So we want to increasingly blend that and make it so it's not such a scary decision for you when you start building an app which direction to go.
Yeah, so to me, it's not only goodbye dialects, but also goodbye web resources.
Yeah, well, I say web sources have other use cases, but I think in a lot of ways where people use web resources today, you could replace that with a Canvas app.
Yeah, web resources as the way to build a user interface, not the web resource as in here's another piece of information displayed. It's more of as UX capabilities of web resources. I had one other question on my list. With upgrade from CDS1 to CDS2, there are probably some applications out there built on CDS1. The most notable one probably CRM for Talent, or Dynamics 365 for Talent, sorry. What would be the process for these guys?
So there's kind of two pieces to it. For like Dynamics, Talent, and other ISV apps, we're working very closely with them, and they're going to basically cut over the CDS2, and they'll transparently handle the data migration for their customers. And then there's end users, like internal line of business applications that are built. And for that, we're actually building a wizard inside of PowerApps where we'll actually walk you through that move from CDS1 to CDS2, and it will help you like stitch up any relationships and information in your Power App, and make sure that your data kind of flows between the two versions seamlessly. Like a way to think about it would be a super simple CDU with a wizard on top. And we'll do that for CDS1 customers to make them get to CDS2. And I'd say if there's anyone listening to this thing that is on CDS1 and wants help and is nervous, please reach out to me. It's just my email address is chlama@microsoft.com. Just shoot me an email, and we're happy to kind of go help one-on-one to make sure it's a success to go from CDS1 to CDS2. We don't want to leave anybody out in the cold.
Okay, great. So there was other than the CDS for apps, the other part of the announcement was the CDS for analytics. And I guess the question I had is, other than the name sharing the CDS, what is the relationship between CDS for apps and CDS for analytics?
So I'd say a huge thing that they share is the common data model. So the model to describe like common business entities and objects is shared between CDS for apps and CDS for analytics. And that makes it very easy to say move your data from CDS for apps to CDS for analytics. And in fact, we're going to have kind of a built-in capability without you having to do any work to move data from CDS for apps to CDS for analytics. So the model is the same, the common data model, which we have a great GitHub page about, which describes in depth all the different schemas and considerations. And we've released those schemas underneath the Creative Commons license. That's going to be shared between those two platforms. And the second is the data connectors. So both variants of CDS support the same set of connectors, which make it easy to connect out to over 200 other business applications, SaaS providers, database technologies, and so on, to actually do the data movement either for transactional purposes or for ETL purposes. So I'd say the CDM and the data connectors are the two big items there. And then another thing I'd add, and that kind of a good way to think about it is, really there's a common data service, and internally there are two different types of technologies and two different types of behavior based on different needs. So CDS for apps is all about transactional needs, like really hot, mutable, credible data. And behind the scenes, that's like a SQL Azure type thing implementation. And then CDS for analytics is all about big data and analytics on it with AI and things like that. And behind the scenes, that's like a data lake technology like Azure Blobs or Azure Data Lake. And that's kind of why they're different things, because you're not going to want to put an exabyte of data into CDS for apps because it's just not designed to do that. But you do want to go put an exabyte of data into CDS for analytics, and that actually makes it possible to get really great insights across how you engage with your customers, your products, and your employees inside that data lake with the smarts on top of it. So really the common data service from your perspective is we want to make it feel like one thing, and we're going to do a whole bunch of work to make that be true. But they have to be different technology because they do serve very different needs.
Okay, great. I think Sean has a question.
Yeah, so Charles, we talked a lot about the two different interfaces with CDS and with Dynamics, the standard solution-based interface for creating attributes and entities and objects. Do you foresee us maintaining that? Do you see a future where solutions are deprecated? How do you see the future given the CDS being the underpinnings of the whole platform?
Well, I'd say solutions are a key part of CDS. And I'd say like solutions are probably one of my favorite things from the XRM platform that we have inside of CDS now. In terms of like ALM is an absolutely key aspect of how we move around changes for our customers and how we package things that go inside of AppSource for ISVs and system integrators. So solutions won't be going anywhere. And what I'd actually say is to kind of demonstrate that fact is we're increasingly moving internal Microsoft applications to use solutions themselves to be deployed, updated, and managed for our customers. Like if I were to go and say like the talent application, when it runs on top of CDS for apps, it will actually be using solutions to manage how it installs all of its entities and things like that. And it will be using solutions the same way a third-party ISV or the same way an internal IT developer would go and actually use solutions on top of CDS or XRM. So I'd say solutions are really, really key, and that's even the direction where we want to increasingly push all of our internal applications for updates in the future.
With that said, though, you've got really two different ways to add database components, the CRM experience and then the CDS experience. Are those experiences coming together when you're adding fields? Because that was one thing with CDS 1 that I found some of the fields like option sets, adding options to option sets was a little bit more elegant and more modern feeling than the configuration or customization experience inside Dynamics.
Got it. So that's a good question about Solution Explorer specifically. So I'd say if you actually go to PowerApps.com today, you can go manage your entities in a CRM instance using the CDS UI. Because in reality, it's one backend. It's just a different face on top of that backend. So you'll be able to go to PowerApps.com and manage your CRM or CDS instances. And the inverse is also true. You'll be able to go to Solution Explorer and manage your CDS or your CRM instances. And kind of from where our main investment is going to go make it a little more modern feeling, that investment is at PowerApps.com. But we're not going to throw away Solution Explorer. And Solution Explorer is very much where the majority of customization actually happens today, particularly for the CRM case.
Okay, great. Well, Charles, it's been great to talk to you. You've cleared up a lot of our confusion.
I've got last question.
George always gets the last word.
Sounds good.
No. Matt Barber, throughout the MVP Summit, used the word CRM Prime. Is that pure internal, or and if it is external, I have one ask. Can you code name the next release Optimus?
I'd say that's very much an internal name that we use to kind of describe how we layer our internal solutions. So it's not something we're really going to go publish or make customers have to be aware of. A good way to think about it is CRM Prime is the beginning of actually moving CRM, like Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, to be a proper solution on top of the platform. Because I'd say the ideal state long term for Microsoft, and we think this is definitely the ideal state for our customers, is everybody really starts with a blank CDS, and you're just installing solutions on top of that blank CDS. So if you are a CRM customer, you have a blank CDS with the CRM app installed on that CDS. If you also install Talent, you also just getting the talent solution installed on that CDS, and so on. And when we complete that full separation of concerns and that layering is very clear to our customers and partners, we think we'll have reached a really important moment to make this a truly general abstract platform, and we can start to share and offer components of our own applications to be used by third parties and ISVs. Like if you want to use resource schedule optimization from field services, is there a way where we can make it so you can use that without having to buy a field services license? Because if you're not actually a field services customer, you just want that functionality. So things like that will become a lot more possible once we complete that CRM Prime factoring that Matt's talking about.
Okay, great. Well, Charles, appreciate you joining us today. What's the best, you mentioned your email address, but what's the best way people want to follow you? What social networks are you on and things like that?
So I think people can go to Twitter. So my Twitter is Lamanna, so Clamanna. And but emails, I'd say that the best way if you ever want to reach out to me with feedback or get help with something, I am always on top of my email, and I'll make sure to get routed to the right place.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Charles. We appreciate you joining us.
All right,
Thanks so
awesome.
much.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Appreciate taking the time.
This has been CRM Audio, the Dynamics 365 podcast. Send us your feedback at voice@crm.audio. Check out our other shows at crm.audio or subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and any place else podcasts are offered. This podcast is a production of Dynamics Podcast, LLC.